Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host, Dylan Moss, and I have with me the clown prince of Sony, Travis Snell. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing good. Other than Monday, nothing to do a side quest podcast. Just like a talk about off air. It's just like, oh my goodness, it's hailing outside. So there you go. Like legitimately, the girls were playing outside about half an hour ago, and they ran and they're like, it's raining, but now it's like hailing hard. So hopefully, I don't lose power or anything in the middle of this. So, but other than that, I'm okay. Good week though coming up though. We're gonna do this cast. We've got X-Men coming up, Fall Guy. I think there's some fun casts to be had coming up. So
Yeah, very much so. And now I'm excited for this episode. In this one, we're going to be talking about the PS4, kind of a retrospective of our time with that console, and we'll explain why we're doing that now out of all times. Very random time to do it, but we're going to do it nonetheless. That should be fun. A couple other shout outs. Make sure to join that Patreon to get episodes early and ad free. You can leave a review, help the show grow. You can join our Discord, talk to us about all these games. I released a bonus SideQuest episode, a little solo one, talking about the history of like the single player modes in Super Smash Bros. Is a very zoomed in thing I wanted to talk about there, and that was a fun one. So you can go check that out.
I'm excited.
Travis, I have a big announcement today. I have an
man.
official release date for Potion Problem. Not often will we get to announce release dates of things for a video game release, so it's pretty exciting. But it is coming out May 21st, so just a few short weeks from now. That is the SideQuest Tuesday of that given week. The same day as Hellblade 2, I think. So that's some big competition, but hopefully a different enough market. But if anyone's missed that somehow, Potion Problem is my game. You can wishlist it on Steam. You can go check out the trailer. You can follow the social media things for it to get some updates and all that. But yeah, it's coming out very soon, so I'm very excited to have it done. I did like the final build of it yesterday. I did a couple of more changes, and I haven't quite exported that yet, but I think it's done. I'm sure once it's out, people will discover some bugs and crashes and stuff, and I'll do those patches when they need to. But otherwise, it's like, wow, it's the final upload. I'm sure you had a similar cathartic feeling when you did the final kind of export of Adrenochrome too. Huh?
Yeah, it's good and scary at the same time, which is funny. We had one of our trailers taken down today because it promotes conspiracy theories. So I got to go to YouTube and tell them that this is just a trailer.
Weird, man.
This is just a trailer for a
weird.
fictional movie. But so hopefully that doesn't happen to you. But yeah, it's a great feeling, and that's Emily's birthday, so that's a good day.
Oh, right on.
Maybe
Okay.
that's what I'll be getting her. I'll be show up in the card, be a nice little wish list to Potion Problem. But no, congrats, very exciting, and yeah, everyone go check it out. Tons of fun. Love the art style and everything. So I figured out I problem solved some stuff this week.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
there's still one more thing I need to problem solve with you, but I
Okay.
like the design. Not a problem with the game. It's a user error as far as like, okay, maybe I'm cooking something wrong here, but that's the best part. So yeah, May 21st. That's exciting. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. I'll also announce that we will be doing a retrospective of Hellblade. Don't know exactly what week we're gonna release that, but the first Hellblade, we're gonna do a retrospective of that, and then I'll be playing the new one. And if you have time, I'm sure you jump in too. If you like that first game, I don't know.
I think
about
that's what's
Taylor.
dependent on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think if I like
see how
that
that
first
goes.
game, and I feel like I've always looked at it like it's a Travis game. So yeah, spoiler. At least I'm on it, and that's because I've always said lately I'm very busy. But 7 to 8 hours, like okay, I can put a night or two aside to complete that. So it's always looked like a Travis game, and it looks very creative. So I'm excited to sit down and talk to you about that one. And then if I'm excited, yeah, then I would love to dive into that second one because I've always heard great things about it as well. So
Yeah, no. So anyone who hasn't played that game, or if you have and you want to replay it, now would be a good time to do so. And you can send any questions our way. We'll include it in that retrospective. I'm excited. I've never played the game. I've been waiting until the kind of imminent release of the second one to finally jump in there. So it'll be a good time. It's up on Game Pass,
I was
easily
gonna say,
accessible
yeah,
there.
So if you're thinking about it, it's an easy download if you got PC or
Definitely.
Xbox Game Pass. So
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, check that out. Once again, I don't know exactly what week we're going to do that side quest episode.
Yeah,
There's
in May.
a chance we record it kind of early and it goes up on Patreon nice and early, so you can go check that out as well. You already shouted out Fall Guy and X-Men. Any other shout outs before we get into
No,
it?
I don't think so. We just got the regular, just kind of retros dropping here and there, Apes and Mad Max and stuff, and there's other ones starting. But no, those are the biggest one. And next week, if you're a fan of Apes, that's drawn. But and yeah, you already mentioned Patreon, but yeah, we just dropped all our Patreon exclusive episodes. So the X-Men Fancy Cast Part 2, those
Right
are
on.
always tons of fun. So yeah, look out. And I guess I should promote this because it is video game related. Tomorrow, Kirkland and Taylor are recording their Knuckles review. They have finished that.
Oh, yes.
So,
I did write
yeah.
that on my notes, but I forgot to mention it. So thank
They
you.
were planning to this
shouting that
weekend,
out.
but Kirkland had a Strata meeting, so they had to move it to a little bit. So you'll hear, if you're a fan of Sonic, the reviews are also on the feed, but if you're just a fan in general, they will be breaking it down. Kirkland's a big Sonic guy, you know, a Sonic sucker, I'd call him. So if you're into that,
Sucker.
it's a whole binge, which I did not know. I have to edit our calendar because I thought it was
Oh,
weekly,
really?
but-
I thought it was the weekly. Interesting.
Yeah, no, it was a binge. So yeah, that'll drop on the Wednesday for the feed. So look out for that.
I hope, because when we did specifically Halo Season 1, that kind of motivated Kirkland to go back and play some Halo games, and then on Sidequest we can talk about some of that. I wonder if this will motivate him to want to go play any Sonic stuff, and I'd be curious to see which games he does jump to if he's itching to get back in there.
Yeah, because I feel like you want to go with Knuckles, right? Because you could go with the game Knuckles introduced as the villain, but you won't get that vibe or anything, you know.
Huh.
But I've heard. I think there's going to be some interesting discussion on that cast. I
Okay.
think it's not exactly what they're expecting, so I don't know if that's good or bad. But
All I heard is that Knuckles is not in it a lot or something. So I
no,
mean,
and that might tip
that
to
would
what
not
they're
make
thinking.
me very excited if I was a fan of
Yeah.
such a series. But
But sometimes those are the best reviews when we're just, you know, you guys have had some good Halo ones. I'm trying to think, is there any other, check out our fall review, but is there anything else video game? I feel like there's something else video game TV movie show coming out soon. I don't know why I don't know why
Borderlands
that's
is in the
mind.
summer, but that's still
I guess
a bit
it's it.
away.
Yeah, maybe I'm just thinking of Knuckles. But yeah, check out our fall review. I don't think we ever taught a newscast, but that got reviewed for season 2. So check out our season 1 review, and we'll be back whenever that happens. Amazon's second biggest show of all time behind
That's
Rings
crazy.
of Power. So yeah.
Yeah, Rings of Power is #1. Okay.
Yeah. So
Nice.
that's cool. Things we like, you know. We'll
Very
get more
good
of them.
stuff. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the games we've been playing. I've got 2 games to talk about today. First one is, Travis, I've jumped into Watch Dogs 2
Oh
of
my
all games.
goodness! I never got to this. What inspired this? I feel like just a couple weeks ago, I think it was a 3-person cast. I can't remember whichever one we just did, you, me, and Taylor. It felt like we were talking about how like Watch Dogs was just. Even there was a report this week that Watch Dogs is dead. They plan on doing nothing. So how did you find yourself Watch Dogs 2?
A few months ago, it honestly might have been like half a year ago now. It's been a while. I saw that it got dropped on Game Pass, and I was like, oh, I want to jump in and check this out. Would I spend $80 for it? Absolutely not. But Game Pass is a perfect way to do that. Absolutely. And I installed it months ago, and it's just been sitting there. And then finally, a few days ago, Travis, I always love to have a just ongoing like open world game in my life.
Okay.
One that if it's a late night, and these late nights mostly we've been doing a lot of Call of Duty, but if we don't have that, I like just an open world game where I can my brain is half turned off and I can just roam around and do random stuff. Like, I don't really have one on the go, so it felt like, okay, maybe I'll jump into Watch Dogs 2 finally. And really, I have a very short history with this series, which is that I checked out the first one either really cheap on a Steam sale or it was like maybe even a Blockbuster rental, like was that long ago, and played it for like, I don't know, a handful of hours, and then it just like wasn't really working for me, wasn't clicking, and so I dropped it and then never really thought about it since. And then I think it was more when the most recent Watch Dogs, which was probably 3 years ago now, Watch Dogs Legion, that game does look great, and from even the reviews, like I think some of the mechanics there seems like they really got a lot of stuff right, and I do want to go check that one out. If that one gets added to Game Pass, I'll go check it out. I think it's on Ubisoft Play or Plus or whatever they call their thing. So maybe that would be a way for me to check it out in the future. But I was like, okay, in the meantime, let me go check out this second game here. So that was sort of the reason for it. So yeah, once again, it is available on Game Pass. And I don't know if it'll be there for how long. I mean, it's kind of like Ubisoft does put some stuff in there, but I'm guessing it's usually for like maybe a year basis, and then they kind of take it off and rotate different things in there. So not sure how long it'll be on there. But also the second reason for checking it out is, GTA 6 is like right on the horizon, and man, I cannot wait for it. I'm very excited for it, but it's like it's also been so long since I've really just jumped in to GTA, and this feels like GTA Light in a lot of ways, where you're just bumping around San Francisco, just like hijacking random vehicles, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. There's combat. You can go just run off on the side and do a motorcycle race for half an hour if you want. It's just one of those kind of sandboxy city games. And I feel like a lot of the open world games I've been doing recently is like I don't know, played a few of the Far Cry things or even some Fallout, and just playing these sort of different settings, just going back to like a city sort of one is kind of fun. And I'm not super far in it yet, but so far it's pretty fun. I'm surprised that like the game feel of it is actually surprisingly good. I think that's one reason why I end up bouncing off some Ubisoft things. And like in the last few years, I've tried to jump into some Assassin's Creed games, but they just don't feel that great to play. Sorry, Taylor, if you're listening to this. I don't know what it is about them, but they just don't feel as snappy and responsive, or something about the combat doesn't do it for me. But this just felt a whole lot better. So I don't know what I would have to look into the history of like the crossover of who worked on Watch Dogs 2 versus the Assassin's Creed teams and whatever. But even if they have similar engines, this one just feels good to play. The story is really stupid and silly, and the characters are like really lame and all that, but it doesn't really matter. I think the core mechanic of Watch Dogs is that you have all this tech and you're hacking into all these things, and you can change street lights, or you can bust open like random electrical panels in the ground to mess with enemies. You can make cop cars from afar, just like glitch out and do all sorts of things. And those mechanics are pretty fun so far. So I don't know how much I'll get out of this one. I don't know if I'll be playing like 20 hours worth, or just playing a few nights here or there just to get a feel of it. But it's fun, and it's I guess better than I expected it to be, just because I kind of bounced out the first Watch Dogs pretty quick, and this one's just kind of dumb fun, which is what I kind of want every once in a while after a big serious game.
Yeah, that's fun. I paid for it one time years ago. It was $20, and I never fired it up because
there's a few of those Ubisoft games for me where they go so cheap. I pick them up and I never play them, so maybe it works for them.
That's good. That's a good itch scratch, because like GTA is next year, but at the same time we don't know when next year, and I think it will hit, but you never know, right? That game that big, they could always delay it a little bit. So yeah, sometimes you need just I won't say it's easy, but it's not necessarily like a challenge. Like you don't want to plug in like an Elden Ring or maybe a brain, like when you're talking about like a late nighter. So I'm glad you're enjoying it at least. So do you think you're gonna at least are you just kind of doing whatever is fun? Are you streamlining the main mission, or where are you going with it?
So far, I've not really streamlined it. Like I said, I just kind of did a couple random side quests. I went and did like a motorcycle race. So just kind of picking things on the map that looked interesting. But I don't know. I think I will, once I jump back in, go do a couple of the main quests just to maybe get a bit further and see if there's any kind of basic mechanics that kind of get unlocked, as often games will kind of hide some of that stuff in the main story. So maybe I'll do a little bit more of that. But it seems like pretty open from the get-go. Like you start with a lot of money, and it's really easy to make money in this game. So buying upgrades and like, I don't know, vehicle stuff is pretty easy. Like you just, when you're driving by someone in a car, you can just like, connect with any vehicle. And sometimes you'll just have a chance to just steal money from their bank account. So you just hit a button, you're just driving, and you just like, lock onto every vehicle and just steal money from their bank account. It's like, it's such a weird mechanic. It's like too easy. There's no downside. Cops don't come after you if you do that.
I feel like that would be half the fun, that there should be a mechanic where you can do that, but if you do it too often, or if you do it in the wrong spot.
There's seemingly just no punishment for just
you're a master.
Stealing. But you're stealing like $20 here or there, so it's like, maybe it's not so much. Maybe after I've stolen $1 million worth, then it'll be like, okay, now something,
we got to bring them in.
Fuzzy's going up. But yeah, one thing that really stood out to me with the promotion of Watch Dogs Legion, the sequel to this, is the kind of simulated city element of it, and how every single person that you'll see, every NPC like has a schedule. They have a job that they go to. They have certain hobbies. They do certain things. They have like an economic level, and then those are the people you're like recruiting, and so you'll get people who have different skills and stuff, and all that seems really interesting. And so it's cool going back to this game, and not really, honestly, Watch Dogs 2, it's like, it's been so long that I kind of forget what the whole marketing hype around it was, other than just like being a brighter, more colorful.
That's what it was.
I feel like it was that.
Funky,
it was like Watch Dogs 1, but like more of a GTA 5 sort of vibe to it, I guess.
And people didn't really like the lead. That was like too dark and stuff of the first one. Adrian Pierce, because it's like about the death of your wife or daughter, and people are like, I just want to sandbox this world. So it's bright and colorful Watch Dogs.
But this one kind of has a mechanic like that, where once again, every person you run into in the world, they have like a name. It tells you like their job, whether they are like a flight attendant or like a drug dealer. Like some of them are just, there's way more criminals in this world than one would expect. And you can get like basic stats about them. And if they have a quest related to them, then you'll also see that kind of thing. So I don't think it's quite as deep, definitely not as Legion seems to be in some of those mechanics, but it's cool to see kind of the lineage of that. Cause I don't remember from Watch Dogs 1 if there was a mechanic like that in there, where they just give every NPC a name and a house and stuff like that, right?
I think there was
Like, do you remember what city the Watch Dogs 1 was in?
Chicago.
Was it
Chicago,
Chicago?
Illinois. Yeah. I feel like I remember you could scan anybody and they'd have some kind of made up. I could have just been a name, but I feel like that was a thing. Maybe not anybody, but it feels like a lot. You could look into someone because you're trying to always find like, oh, I need like a security worker so I could pull this. So I feel like there was a mechanic. Maybe it was a lesser than version of the first one, but there was definitely something like that in the first one, I recall.
Mm-hmm. I like that kind of mechanic because that's something that, you know, Dishonored has with the heart, where you can just like click on any NPC in the world and it will tell you some little world building bit about them, something about their backstory, their family, or why they are the way they are. And so I like that because it just makes you feel more immersed. It feels like more part of the world. And so I don't know, this might be a bit more surface level than they get in Legion, but either way, it's, once again, cool to kind of see the stepping stones of all that. So yeah, I'm going to keep playing it. I don't know how long I'll play it for, but I definitely another few sessions and just mess around and see what more of it's about. I don't know how long it would be to just like play through the main story of it, but I also don't know if that's like the ideal way to play a game like this. Like, I think it's more just like whatever looks fun in that moment, whether it's a side quest that stands out or whatever, just messing around trying to figure things out. Like, I think that will be more kind of the path I take with it. Just looking for a more lighthearted game in that way. So
plus there's no you know, you could keep playing that for a whole year if you want. There's no rush to beat Watch Dogs 2, you know. It's like you can get spoiled or anything.
No one's
like
on
that,
me
so.
like, dude, you gotta finish this. The retro's coming
out. It's not like, oh, this Sunday we gotta review it. It's a good one to have. So
and then Travis, the other game I picked up is, for whatever reason, Xbox was having like a Halloween in the spring sale where they had a bunch of like scary games on sale. Okay. So I picked up Outlast 1 and 2 for like $5. Okay. $5 for both of them. Got a really sweet deal there. So I've been playing Outlast 1, which is fun because if you go back, everyone can go back, check out our Outlast Trials review where we had the full crew on that. We talked about that game. And then even after that review, we played for a few more weekends, had a really great time with it. I think we've kind of seen most of what we want to see from it at this point. I'm sure when there's new content drops, we'll jump back in there every once in a while, but we're just kind of in the Warzone thing right now. But yeah, I since then I wanted to go back and check out these first two games. So I'm going to start with the first one here. And yeah, I'm maybe 2 or 3 hours in at this point. And it's fun to kind of go back and just see the similarities and differences with Trials. Obviously, that is more of a co-op-y focused game, and it's all built around that and like how the levels and the structure of it. It's a lot more level-based and like about the RPG elements. There's a lot more UI elements to it. Whereas going back to the first game, of course, is a lot more simplified, more of a cinematic thing with a lot of like pre-programmed jump scares and moments and characters and like linear kind of forced interactions and like, you know, you're going to fall through this hole and then you walk up certain distance and then like a cutscene starts playing and then someone kicks you down that hole, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm liking it for that. It just has more of like a obvious kind of flow to it, I suppose. I'm liking the video camera angle of it, where you have your camera up or down, and that like certain events will only get tracked in your notepad if you have the camera up, which is a weird element. But then that's also where the night vision element comes in. Got to keep track of your batteries and all that. It doesn't seem that difficult so far. I'm playing on the easiest difficulty. That's probably why. That's my general go-to for horror games. Maybe for this, since I've played Trials, I should have gone for a higher one, but I don't know. I don't need the added stress of like being low on batteries, you know? Like the game is stressful enough with all this freaking jump scares going on. And then, you know, I think maybe the one thing that's standing out to me so far and is maybe the one thing that's making it a bit less compelling is I think with Trials, they did a really good job with the enemy AI in terms of the unpredictability of it. Also, you're fighting so many people at a given time sometimes. Whereas going back to this game, and maybe I'm sure it'll ratchet up the difficulty and intensity of things, but the AI is seeming a lot more predictable in a way that's taking away a lot of the tension. And like one interaction that I've seen happen a few times now is like if you run into a room and you're trying to hide and there's like 2 or 3 lockers and you just go pick whatever locker you're going to go in, the AI will always go and open the locker right next to you, you know, because that's kind of freaky. But they'll never actually open the one you're in unless they saw you walk into it directly. But it's those things that just feels like, okay, I can kind of see I'm like in the Matrix. I can see the coding underneath here that's telling these guys what to do.
That
And it's
in
a bit
Trials
less
too still.
What? What's that?
The locker thing. They do that in Trials too. The right beside you if they don't see you.
Right.
So it's funny that carried over from the first to the multiplayer one. So
Yeah, so that's really my only critique of it so far. Seems to be some of that AI stuff, and then the story and the setting and all that. It's not I guess quite as goofy or like cringy as Trials is. As much like I love what Trials is doing because it's so weird, but yeah, it still is goofy with the characters and the setting and the dialogue and all that. But yeah, it is definitely a bit more serious. I like the visual style to it. Like going back, it's a bit more simplified, obviously, and this is like you can see how the studio evolved over time in terms of like just the detail and the tech and all that. But there's something about the simplistic graphics, like even the skybox has like a weird look to it that is like almost makes you feel like you're in a dream state or something. But just compared to Trials, which all takes place inside these bunkers under, I don't even know where it takes place, but definitely not outside. It's cool to see that different environment. So yeah, it's fun. I'm definitely going to play through the whole thing, and then I'm excited to go into Outlast 2 as well, because we talked about that on the review and how none of us have really put a lot of time into it. So I want to see kind of the different angle on it with a maybe more open outside area. Seems kind of interesting as a different setting.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. You're going through there. I'm not sure. I'm excited when you get to 2 to hear your thoughts, because that's one I still dip my toes in, because all I heard is that it was lesser than. But that was also, I feel like there's been years removed, so maybe it's one of those things of it's lesser than, but was it still enjoyable? And I just listen to everybody, or is it really lesser than where it is like, okay, this is not even that a fun time? Like I imagine it's still a similar aesthetic as far as you're going around, avoiding bad guys or some mechanics. So
yeah, and with 1, because when I got this whole bundle for it, it came with Outlast 1 Whistleblower, which I guess is the DLC. Did you play that back?
No, because I think because I got this free on PlayStation. I don't think the DLC was out at that point.
Gotcha. Okay, and then you didn't like decide to go back when it.
No, and I think at that point I had kind of moved on, but I thought I'd heard good things about it. So.
Okay. Yeah, I got that with this bundle, like I said, so I'll definitely jump into it afterwards and see what's different, what changes. Yeah. I don't think the second game has a DLC pack associated with it, so I wonder why they chose to do it that way. But yeah, interesting. So there you go. I'll share my thoughts as I play through more Outlast. And I know you haven't been playing anything new, more of that Warzone. I'm curious though, because I know you talk about this on Originals, how you're just really busy right now. I got a lot on your plate. You're doing a lot of writing and other things. What is the top of your stack right now? If you're not doing Warzone, you do have some gaming time. What is the top of the stack right now?
Well, other than next, I'll probably move Hellblade to the top just so I make sure it can be done. I still would very much like to go, because like I said, I think I'm in the third. If it's a 3-act structure, because I watch movies, that's always going in my mind. I feel like I'm on the 3rd act of Elden Ring, and I just got busy. And that's a game that, not that you can streamline it, but you can look at some things, and I'll probably be like, okay, what's the best patches to do that? Because that's a game that I purposely was like, I'm not gonna, I said on that very first review we did with Sarah, it's like, I'm not going to try to streamline this, because there's so many games that I'd done that for, and I loved the experience of what's out there. But I would like to go back to that DLC. I just know that it's like it's a fun game, but it is like a commitment. It's like what you're talking about with Watch Dogs. It's the opposite, right? That's not I just got a couple hours at night and I'm kind of tired, but I could just have a fun time. That's like gotta be in the zone. Same thing. You gotta have like everybody would have to be asleep. I gotta be myself and stuff. So I think that would be. the top one after Hellblade, because I don't think there's too many new games coming out that I'm that interested in picking up at least day one. So it'll depend the timing of it. So I guess my trajectory I'm hoping to maybe do is like Hellblade, Elden Ring, and then the DLC, and then that Star Wars game would be on August. So I feel like that would kind of be my months planned out there. So, and then who knows? Like, there's always times we obviously do Warzone. Maybe we'll go back to Outlast if something drops there. But I think that's the trajectory of happening lately. So yeah, I would just like to finally get back there, but I definitely, when I get back in there, I would do the main storyline, but I feel like I'd have to just go right around a bit, get back in that that mindset of the challenge and everything. And even though I think I'm in that demon hell world where there's like that big thing at the entrance that's like standing there. It's like, it looks very there's like a path. I got to it very early, and then I came back to it later. It's like there's lots of
Caelid, is that what you're talking about?
I think so, yeah. And then the entrance, I think when you get there too early, there's like a big thing there. I'm not sure if you can eventually kill it or not, but
There's a couple big things I remember in that area, so I don't know which one you're
it's
talking
right at the
about.
gate. It's right at the entrance of that building, and you can't really get in.
Okay.
You can go behind it, but it wakes up. So I'm not sure if that's a killable thing. I'm sure it is, but yeah, I've just been thinking about getting back in that world. I really enjoyed that game, and I think things like Rings of Power, and that's coming out hopefully in the end of summer, like some more medieval stuff. So I think that's the plan is Elden Ring. I'd like to, but there'll be a certain point. If I get too close to the DLC, then I might pivot to something else smaller before the Star Wars game, and who knows what. But I need to, like I said, I need to download that app and make a full attack plan here, because summer's always busy too. But I want to get back in Elden Ring. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Let's take our first break, and when we get back, we'll get into our main topic. Okay, we are back. So, yeah, like I said at the top of the show, the PS4. We're doing a little retrospective here. We're gonna talk about our favorite games. We'll do a little top 5 ranking. But you might be wondering why the timing of this? Why is this coming out now? It's a very random time for this. And I think a couple reasons. One, this week, a very slow news week. There's not a whole lot going on. I was looking around my topics list, and I saw this one. I was like, yeah, no, we never got around to this. And I think the reason why we never got around to it is the end of the PS4 is kind of weird, and it's like you could even say that it hasn't even ended yet, but there was just, we talked about doing this cast, me and you, a long time ago, like around the time I think when the PS5 was about to come out, as like a final like end cap there to the PS4, talk about our favorite games from it. But then it's like, okay, well, with the PS5 launch, you have Miles Morales, but that's on PS4 as well. And then okay, and then Horizon Forbidden West is coming out, and that's still on the PS4. And then after that, even like, okay, God of War Ragnarok's coming out, that's still on the PS4. And so I feel like it really isn't until, I feel like this is actually kind of the year, or I guess you could say last year, is when we've finally been kicked into like the PS5 generation proper, like this year in particular with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Stellar Blade, Rise of the Ronin, even Pacific Drive. Like none of those are first party games, but they're all
Spider-Man in fall last year too, because that was finally just PS5, right? So
yeah, for sure. I feel like maybe since that Spider-Man moment is when we finally kicked off into the PS5 proper generation. And then also, like, the timing is kind of weird, because this year, as I just mentioned, those 4 games, none of those are first party, and PlayStation have said, like, we don't have any games coming out this year. They just straight up said that. No first party things are coming out this year. So it's going to be a bit of a dry spell, so then maybe it's a good time to actually kind of soak it all in and look back at this. So yeah, the PS4 is a console that me and you were both big fan of. We talked about a lot on the podcast, of course. But I want to first just ask, like, do you miss it? Do you miss the PS4, or is the PS5? Has that been like a smooth transition for you, and you're just kind of happy to be in this current gen?
Yeah, I feel like it's been a smooth transition, and to your point, that is like I think it's a pro and a con, because a pro you just kind of pick up, like they changed a bit of the UI, but it's like almost ethereal. There's like nice golden sparks and music versus I don't know, the blue screen. The menu's pretty much the same. I think they divide like the games and media, so it does feel just like then. I think it's a easily more successful version of like the Wii to the Wii U, because the PS5, like there's some advances, but I think that's the problem, is it doesn't feel like there's a clear, almost all those consoles, like I said, Wii to Wii U, that doesn't feel like that. But I feel like Xbox is almost similar to right now, with the Xbox One to the, what are they now? Xbox like Series X and S. Like they just feel like, and granted, they've kind of said that before, that these things might become more like phones, which I get from a business standpoint, because if something's working, why do a big change up, right? You saw what happened with the Wii U, right? You saw what happened with Xbox One when they tried to do big change ups. Sometimes that can completely backfire, right? So, or it can be something like the Switch. So I feel like it is just like the better than version, but even that's not like that better than. Of course, there's games that are more graphically improved and it's more powerful. I don't miss the plane sound it makes, so hopefully my PS5 never gets to that point where it's like, so far so good. We're how many years PS5 now? It's
2020, man. This is the 4th year currently.
Jeez Louise. So yeah, we're coming on almost half a decade next year. So yeah, I don't think I miss it, but it's almost like they didn't allow me to miss it, because like PS1, PS2, PS3, and then PS4 feel so distinct. All the Nintendo eras feel very distinct, other than Wii and Wii U. And then all the Xbox ones did as well too. Whether it was look of the console, that's the most thing. And I'd say like I'm the worst person to ask about look of consoles, because both consoles have just been in a cupboard. I never see them, so it's not like, oh, I missed that. Maybe I miss how small the PS4 was. Like it was not as like bulky, but I don't think I miss it in that aspect. It feels very much like it's just lived on and evolved. And like I said, maybe I'd like that with the PS6, but I'd kind of get if they just stayed in the same realm if we got to make something like them. So
yeah, I do feel like there is something as time goes on, these current console generations. I guess maybe Nintendo is not part of this, but yeah, I do feel like there's a bit more of these consoles are seeming less unique, and I don't know if they're going to be as. I mean, we're also just getting older, so like obviously we're always going to be nostalgic for the N64 in a way that we just naturally won't be for something like the PS4. But I think you're right, especially in the era now where like, have you bought a physical game on your PS5?
no, I never will. I never will.
I have one on my Xbox Series X. I think I got Elden Ring on physical version in case Taylor wanted to borrow it or something. But I think that's part of it where like you almost don't even see that delineation between the console generation when you're not really like having those physical versions of the game. You just kind of connect with things differently, especially Xbox when it comes to Game Pass. For a lot of these games, like, it doesn't really matter if you're playing on Xbox One or Series X, even still in the year 2024, 4 years after that console is released too. And so yeah, I definitely feel like these systems, I mean, they still feel like generations, but it feels a little bit less so. And I think for me, like the PS4, that was the first PlayStation console I ever owned personally. I played a lot of PS1 and 2 growing up at friends' house, and then a little bit of PS3 as well. Never played really any of the handhelds. But I think for me, that was like a very special thing, is finally being in that world for the first time. And it took some getting used to. But by the end of that, like, man, that's might be my favorite controller ever. I love that PS4 controller. And I miss it now that I'm like a primary Series X gamer these days. And fuck, I hate the Joy-Con so much still to this very day. I mean, the GameCube controller is iconic, but in terms of a more modern controller design, I still love that PS4 controller. And then even just like what it felt like, I still remember those E3 showcases where we got some of those big games. When we first saw Ghost and was like, what is this game? And seeing Spider-Man and Horizon and all those Death Stranding trailers. And I just feel like that was such an exciting time for Sony, and even just like, not to just stand over a corporation here, but even just like, Sean Layden and the whole direction and the aesthetic of PlayStation was something I was so fond of and I was so hopeful for the future of. And now I'm very much like, I don't love the direction they taken, but now they're, the new CEO in that position, so maybe things will take a turn. But yeah, there was that whole allure of that that time, and then of course releasing all these like huge, unique new IP, I think is huge too. Whereas the PS5 generation has been like, oh yeah, a lot of sequels to those games, and that's great. But there is something special about just game after game after game of either a reboot of an old series like God of War or Horizon, Death Stranding, Ghost, Spider-Man, similar thing, where it's like, man, these are just new, fresh games that we haven't seen before, and they're all good pretty much. Yeah. Like even the ones that we maybe rag on a little bit, it's like Detroit Become Human, still a very solid game, or Days Gone, haven't got around to it, but like still a solid game. Just
people are always like, it's underrated. People don't give it a fair shot,
Yeah, so I don't know. I very much look back on those like maybe 3 or 4 year long period in that PS5, because I didn't get it, or PS4, but I didn't get it at launch. I got maybe like 2 or 3 years in, and like that period was like really great. And then all the reviews that mostly me and you did, sometimes Kirkland would jump in on them, but that was just such a great era for gaming. It's one of those things where, man, I didn't realize we were in the golden years until we're like past them. It's like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't know if you'll ever see, and I think that's something that people have listened to podcasts, I've seen articles about it, people that cover games like daily, or that's their job. It's just I even with everything, so many game studios closing down, or I think it's very similar. And it'll be funny to look back in decades, right? Because I always joke about this and I say that since like 2005, like life's pretty boring, because you look at like 60s to 90s, and even 2000s, like everything's so distinct, right? But it just feels like since the 2010s, like we kind of like, it's just kind of the same thing, but a little bit different, a little bit newer. And that's the same thing. Like you look at that when we were on the podcast at 2015 to 2019 for movies and games, like movies having just look at a movie. Oh, that's a guaranteed $1 billion, guaranteed $1 billion. Right? Same thing with games. Like, oh, that's a hit. That's a hit. We're now, unfortunately, get so many studios that close or shutting down or layoffs. Right. And it's just, I don't think we appreciated back then that man, there's so many people that was spending money, and that could be a bunch of economic stuff too, but just in general, like these big games, same thing, like these studios producing all these. I think we kind of thought that, oh, it's going to be this way forever, when really, when you look back at the history of gaming, it was never like that, right? It was just that it was crazy that we happen to have a few years like that all together, especially for Sony, right? I think Nintendo's had that sometimes as well too, but even then I feel like they would do that, and then they go off the gas for a little bit and they wait and then they come out, where Sony was just for about 2.5 years putting out something. And if it wasn't a game, it was a hype announcement. It was stuff like God of War. Like that was a thing where I remember all of us, it was you, me, Kyle, Liam, Tyler, and none of us were really big God of War people. But after that trailer, we're like, wow, this looks like something really incredible, right? And I feel like it's been a minute since I've gotten that from kind of any company. There's the odd time, and I think it's more specifically studios, and that, and again, with E3 and stuff, and that kind of goes away. And there's that hype cycle of nowadays. It's just, you can put out a trailer Tuesday, right, and get that. But I think it just, the stars kind of aligned, and I do think that they did kind of have a little bit. I think it's much like everything else. Like, you know, I talk about this in wrestling all the time. Like, competition breeds that sort of stuff, and I wonder if they had just completely dominated the PS3 era if we get that PlayStation, right? Because I think luckily at the end of that, they came around and they outsold 360, but that's not the narrative, right? The narrative was everyone had 360. That's what you played with your friends. So I wonder if they just won and they were still console. I feel like they did feel we need to make big games that sell this console, that make it have to be the destination point. Where now, even though they're not selling like the PS5 numbers, I think it's still going to be very like successful. Also, the PS5, like it is, but I mean, like, I don't know where it will be in the grand scheme of things. I think PS5 is like, or PS4 is like what? It's in the top 5 for sure, right? Not counting handhelds. I think it's top 5, top 3, somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, I think PS2 is still the highest, followed by I believe the Switch at this point, then the Wii, and then maybe the PS2 is after that point. Or sorry, the PS4 is at that point.
Yeah, that to me sounds right. PS4 at 4, yeah. So yeah, to me, that's where it's just, I wonder with that narrative if that would have been it, because now I just feel like, oh, they kind of get to coast, right, for the most part. Of course you still want to be selling stuff, but, and the last point I had is like what you were talking about with Xbox. That's the other thing now too, where when you're gonna have games coming to PlayStation, that those generations feel even less than, right? Like it feels now to me, it's like if you want your PlayStation or Xbox, and if you're not a PlayStation exclusive guy, it really just comes down to like, which controller do you like better? Like what you want? Like if you just play, if you're a mainstream person that plays your Call of Duty, your Maddens, your I don't know what's gonna be on both consoles from like GTA, right? Like I don't think I believe those rumors that it's gonna be PlayStation exclusive for a year, even, you know. So
doubtful,
yeah, I don't buy any of that stuff. So the games have made even less so then. So it's a weird time to be in, and that's why I've always cheered for Xbox, but I think they're going a different route now. And I think this is the PlayStation we kind of get forever now, where people buy them, they're the name, and you're still going to get exclusives, of course, but it's not going to be that rapid rate that we got a couple of years ago, which was huge. So
yeah, no, I love what you were saying about the presentation of it. I feel like they just had such like such a strong presence with all those like showcases. You just knew it was something you're going to look forward to, and whether it was like a state of play thing or the big on showcase, whatever it was, like you knew you were going to just be at least intrigued by what they're showing. And then along with that is just like, the release calendar just felt so solid, where you're getting consistent game or 2 or 3 every year. And I just feel like even right now, as I just talked about, like they don't really have a big new game this year. Yeah, they like Rebirth, that's a huge title for their console, but in terms of the first party stuff, they don't have something there. And that's even like, I love my Series X, I love the console, but I it's mostly just because of Game Pass and the variety there. But man, it takes so long for these like new first party Xbox games to come out, and we're at that point now with PlayStation, where the development cycles are so freaking long that it's just taking so long to get anything. So you're gonna have like large swaths of time where there isn't really something new or exciting coming out, and then it also just makes the whole thing a bit more dry, where I feel like I haven't heard any PlayStation news in like weeks, or just like there's just nothing really going on, because there isn't like these games to talk about. There's not really too much announced. We know like a couple things that are coming out, but for the most part, we're kind of just like, oh yeah, we're assuming that the next Ghost of Tsushima game's like in development, but we don't really know anything about it, and it could still be like another 3 years away or something crazy like that. So there's the odd one where like we're now kind of getting into that cycle of Death Stranding 2, which is exciting, but then you can even look at that and be like, well, it's not quite first party either. So there's maybe a little bit difference there from where we were a few years ago.
Well, and I think that's the thing with the PS5. It kind of either goes two ways, where either this is the console that looked at as it started the norm of what PlayStation is for the next few decades, or if PlayStation 6 is a bit more similar to PS4, where it's a bunch of games and there's a change up here, it could be looked at as the transitional period, as far as like, well, they're just kind of coasting on PS4. I feel like because we've already gotten rumors about PS6 that it is just going to be, this is the norm, and like, okay, we're going to make it a little bit different here. And also we see like some of those advancements, like with Unreal Engine, it's like, man, there's going to be some really pretty looking games. So it's like, I get that consoles will be more expensive and they're just going to be maybe more powerful instead of really changing much. But yeah, I feel like we still need some time to see exactly what the era is. But I think it is a defining era one way, where PS4 to me is like I think it's going to be kind of the peak for a while, because I think it's going to be the peak for what they have in the game, but also just business wise, right? Because it'll be looked at as the time where they were the top guy, you know. Because Nintendo, it's that thing where they've been the top guy like many times, you know. Like they're all like, to me, they are the top because they didn't start the whole thing, but they kind of did, right? Like with them being this big brand, they were the 1st one that people that didn't play video games would play that console. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see even 5 years from now what's looked back as. But I think it's like that thing where it's, I don't miss the console PS4, but I miss the era of PS4, because it did feel like you said those roadmaps were nice, because even if we didn't have a date, we kind of had like an expectation of, okay, this might be like same thing like Ghost of Tsushima. I'm just crazy we haven't heard like anything about that, you know. Like it's because when did that game come out? 2018 or something like that.
2019, I think. Yeah.
So we're coming on 5 years now, because it came out in the summer, which is
and then I think
nuts.
some of that DLC stuff came out in 2020.
True, right? And they did
might have come out
they
in
did do
2020,
Legends,
actually,
right? That's what it was called, right? Ghost of Tsushima Legends, right?
Yeah, Legends.
Yeah,
and then
so there's
Ishi
other
Island,
stuff. Yeah,
or Iki Island, whatever it was.
Yeah, so
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of those favorite games. I mean, there's so many, especially when going through this, like just forgot about a handful of, man, I can't believe some of that. And of course, we didn't play everything. I didn't play everything because we're just two people, and
you
we don't get review codes, so it's like
or
it's expensive to get every single one of these games. So we got to pick and choose, but I still think we did a pretty good job of covering a lot of the big ones. So, and I don't really have a particular order here. These are just the order in which I wrote them down. So let's talk about Horizon a little bit. So Horizon's kind of, it's got its sequel, it's got its whole spin-off now with the VR title. And this is a weird one where, you know, at the time, I loved the game so much, and then for some reason I've just like soured on it over the years. I think there's one reason is like I went back for the DLC when they released that, and it was like really hard DLC, and it came out far enough after the launch of the game that I was like really rusty, and I was like, oh, okay, I kind of bounced off that. And then Forbidden West just didn't really do it for either of us. But it's like still, that game was so unique. Some of the mechanics, visually, like still one of the best looking, if not the best looking games of all time. Like a really cool sci-fi world, something just totally different. And also was just cool as like a pivot for that studio too, to do something completely different than they had done before. So such a just iconic kind of new IP, distinctly from that era.
Yeah, new icon with Aloy as well too, because that's always a good thing when you can create new ones. Because, you know, when they brought back Kratos, it's like, hey, well, you're bringing someone back. You get Spider-Man. It's like, well, that's kind of a cheat because he's already established. It was cool to see, okay, we're making somebody of big note. And yeah, I have pretty much, I think it's like you, where it's almost a tale of two cities in a way, where it's weird because the second game is more recent for me, which again, then I did not think was awful. But the first game, I just remember that being the game that still, anytime I was playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, I was like, oh, I want to be back in that game, right? And I think that game for me had a big window to fail as well, because I'm not like I like dinosaurs enough, but I wasn't like, I remember the first trailers, like there's some cool aspects, but I was like, oh, the cool robot dinosaurs, like, hey, what's more to the game? And like you said, Guerrilla Games doing that was very exciting. So I think though that game represents what I was talking about, where it wasn't just them resting on their loyals, or loyals, right? No.
They almost said resting on their Aloys is almost what it sounded like you said, which is like a great pun.
Yeah. Either way, it didn't show that they were playing it safe. They did that also with about God of War 2, but that to me was, okay, we are going to, you know, revitalize stuff, do new things, and also create new things, and it panned out for them because great game, and even then, majority of people think Group 2 is a great game. We'll get a third one day, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It depends on my life where I'll dip my toes back in because I didn't hate the game, and maybe it takes one great trailer with a few things to show me, oh, okay, that could be interesting. And I still like Aloy overall as a character for the most part. In the second game, there are some choices they make where I go, that kind of sucks, but overall, and same thing. That's something that I think they've still said is like they're making a Netflix show or something. So
right. Oh yeah.
yeah, that's where it's like, okay, if that show's there, it might kind of get some juices going. So I think that was just a big win for them in the PS4 era.
Yeah, something so cool and unique.
Because you could see, I'm not sure if it's on your list, but it's like you could see Days Gone where they did that and that didn't go anywhere, right? It wasn't a franchise. They didn't really consider it a hit, and that's where that could have been Horizon, where it could have been, oh yeah, it's this like kind of cool dinosaur robot game, but there's not much there. It's just that's the concept and that's it. But
now, when we're gonna make a top 5 here. I think for the for what we're doing here, we're trying to pick like PS5 exclusive games. If you have games on your list you want to shout out as
PS4,
like,
right?
Sorry, I keep messing up.
It's like I prepared wrongly.
No, like if you have a game that's not a PS4 exclusive, but you just heavily associate it with the console, that's cool too. We can bring those up. But then we also have to keep in mind that, like, man, a lot of these games aren't even exclusive anymore because they've come to PC, still console exclusives. But, I think that I think Horizon, is on Steam now at this point, so it's not even an exclusive game anymore. But I think to me, that's still a PS4 game. That's as tippy toppy as you can get there. But when you think of Forbidden West, do you think of that as a PS4 or PS5 game? And I know you played on PS5, but in terms of like the history or the lineage or where it belongs in the annals of time, like where do you think of that one?
And that's what I hate. It's just like this gray area of like it's a cop-out answer, but like I think of neither. I just think of it as a game now, right? Like it's not
just a Sony game.
Yeah, it's just a game that came out. Not that it's not DLC, of course, but it feels almost like when DLC happens, where it comes out and it's like, oh yeah, I remember playing that, or they did something there. And I think there's obviously bigger ones like a Spider-Man 2 that I would remember more. And I guess it's PS5, more like Miles, right? But it's in this kind of weird era, so it's like technically, I can't really put it in either camp because I played that and I played Miles on PS5, but probably more people played those games on PS4, if not the same. Like Miles, I know for sure. Miles sold tremendously on the PS4, right? So I think it's just in this weird nether realm.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I did play it on the PS4, but this one's an easy one to like discount a bit because we don't love the second one as much as the first one. So I think for the sake of our making list possibilities here, we can kick it off. But yeah, it is a weird one that exists in that space. And there's a couple others as well. So let's just talk about those ones next. So Spider-Man, of course, the great Spider-Man 2018, and then Miles Morales as well is kind of in that weird spot. I think one thing that's kind of interesting when I look back on the PlayStation, this PS4 generation of games, is I haven't really replayed a lot of these games. And so if there was like a DLC pack, so for Horizon, for example, that's when I would have jumped back, or eventually I got the Spider-Man DLC, so I jump back and check some of that stuff out. And then Ghost of Tsushima with that online mode and the DLC, once again, I jump back. But if it wasn't for like new content, I didn't really revisit these games or haven't replayed any of them. So they very much exist in that pocket of time. But man, Spider-Man, PS4, my first ever platinum trophy in a game, just played the hell out of it. Just all the different costumes, seeing the city like that, just the gameplay. I haven't really played a lot of Spider-Man games in my life as much as I love that character. So I hadn't played like the classic kind of PS2 one and the other ones that people love so much. So man, just what a game. And once again, a similar story, unfortunately, where Miles Morales didn't quite do it as much for me. I think it was just because it was a little bit shorter. Villain wasn't quite as good and get to kind of steepen it quite as much, but maybe it was just a bit too much of the same, and that first game just nailed it so much. But yeah, when I think back on that one, I love that game so much. The combat system was fantastic. So many unique innovations. I love just the details of looking in different windows and seeing the different, like they put so much detail into just the city of that place. That was such a big part of it, is the character of it. So yeah, what a great time that was.
Yeah, no, and then I'm the reverse, where it's like, not that I played every Spider-Man game known to man, but it's like I feel all the biggest ones that were hits.
Definitely.
Like I was still buying those. They did, God, like Spider-Man Edge Dimensions and Spider-Man Shadow Dimensions and Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Like I was into all of those, and we hadn't got a game in a while, and this was that pre-Arkham era where it's like, okay, we've seen what a big developer can do with a superhero character. When is Marvel gonna kind of get that? And we never really did. It took kind of longer than I thought it really did, and it timed out perfectly with the PS4. But you just thought it would have been almost immediate, right? Of look what they're doing, we got to do this.
Yeah,
you know?
because Avengers was what 2012, and then it wasn't until 2018 that this game came out. Like you would even think like just how huge that early phase of the Marvel stuff would be that would have spawned those games a lot quicker.
And don't even talk about the other ones. Like Batman Arkham is like 2008, 2009. Like it's very early on.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so it's like why? Yeah, so for me that was like finally years of untapped potential like realized, and I think that was one it tied perfectly with our podcast because we had just started not too long ago, and it was just a hype thing. Most of us were Spider-Man fans. And I think it just that delivered on the okay. They're making new games. They're making the revitalized game. That was because there wasn't rumors of that beforehand, right? Like no one had known. Okay, there's a Spider-Man PS exclusive game coming out. So I think that delivered on that PS4 era of like the hype, surprise, and it actually delivering. I don't think anyone's gonna say that Spider-Man is like the greatest game of all time, but I think it met. Like it checked all the boxes everyone wanted, and that's all it needed to do. And I think the sequels have had, even the second one has had the big debate of like, oh, you know, it's smaller, and it's like, was it a worthy follow-up sequel? It's tough because I think the only things they could ever change from that game, the other ones are just story stuff. Because all the stuff you want to do with Spider-Man, they kind of nailed at the gate, right? So there's not much you could really build upon, where that was the advantage that Batman did have, where okay, it starts in a prison and then we're gonna go to Goth, or we're gonna go to a bigger city, then we're gonna go to Gotham, and we're gonna do the Batmobile. Like there was some things they held back, where Spider-Man, to their credit, they kind of gave you the whole kin caboodle out the jump, you know. And that's where it's just like, I don't know if they'll ever really live up. That's why I liked that idea of the Spider-Man multiplayer game, because I thought, okay, you can't really maybe be as good as that first game, but this is something different. And the third one we'll see, because there's some new things they're introducing, but I think you can just kind of just do variations of the great thing you create, other than the story, because both games I think have had story issues, and I think they just haven't tightened those up, and it's going to be what it's going to be. But I think that game was just the ultimate kind of hype thing, and it was, I think it did propel tons of people. Like I don't know if it'll make our top 5 list, but if you were to make games that were the top 5, like what pushed that console,
I think that was the best selling, right? That or God of War were the top PS4 exclusive selling games.
Yeah, and even if it's not the game, just the consoles alone, I feel like that made a lot of mainstream people go, oh, I got to get a PlayStation
Taylor
now.
Field almost bit the bullet, I want to say, after trying that game. Yeah.
So I think for the history of the PS4, that was a huge landmark for them.
And now that we're 4 years removed from Miles Morales, where does that sit with you these days?
I think it's the same. I probably like the sequel a bit more, like Spider-Man 2 more, because obviously it's longer, bigger game. But both of them, it sounds like not a glutton for punishment, but just like I'm accepting anything. But the DLC, Miles, the sequel, again, they don't reinvent the wheel. They're not better than the first game, but I'm always just down for more Spider-Man and more adventures. Yeah. Like I said, I feel like I wouldn't say I enjoyed Miles more than the second game. I think the second game I am with some people that it's tough, right? Because it depends how you play it. But I am with some people that it did feel shorter. With Miles, I didn't have that because I went, it is just, we were kind of prepped beforehand. This is a smaller experience. So I think with that way, I was fine with it. I think it was cool time to get Miles. So I think, that's where I am a little just easy, that it was a good time. I think I liked obviously the villain a bit more than you, but I think it was cool for that fan base as well too, to get something that was just solely Miles, because he's had a couple big years, but he's still a newer character, right? So but overall I still look at it as like I think it's, if that was the only thing we had gotten, I wonder how I feel about it. But because we got Spider-Man 2, it just felt like here's a nice holdover till you get the main course. So
yeah, it was, I mean, that's a perfect kind of thing to have at a launch lineup too.
Yes,
so that timing worked out really
and that sold really well too as well at the time, right? On both the consoles. So
yeah. What's the next one that comes to your mind?
Let's talk about Detroit Become Human, because you brought it up. Because the reason I thought about that, because you said the games that I've replayed, and I feel that Spider-Man was a game that I did replay because they had New Games Plus, so I did do that.
Right.
And Detroit Become Human, for the obvious reasons. That's why I replayed it, because I think I only did it twice. Maybe I did like maybe I did 3 times. One I think was like a
I
shorter
think I like
one.
started a second playthrough, but it was like right after playing the game rather than like coming back a year later. Or
Yeah, and I think you're right where maybe I came back only a few months later. So in that aspect, you're right where I don't think I came back. 2 years later, I'm itching for it because I feel like
I will say I'm excited for the day that we're on Sidequest and you randomly drop the bomb that you've just replayed Detroit Become Human again for the like third time. That would be fun.
that'll be Travis if he wins the lottery and has a lot of money and just like, oh hey, I want to do this. But it's tough because I did replay it a little bit, but at the same time, I'm actually not someone that does like to go other than Knights of the Old Republic. I like just having the one experience and then that's kind of it, or waiting a long time. And if I do wait a long time, there's probably other games, like another game I'll bring up that I'll replay. But no, I think that was a very fun time. I think we both had issues with certain things, and I don't think it worked out as much as we want. I think many other people too were hoping it was going to be like up there with the other games that he had made in the past, right? And just even with the PS4 generation as far as the games we got. So I feel like it's solidly in a B tier spot. It's nowhere near the A tier or the S tier. People might even argue it could be lower than that. I think it all depends on the route you win, and I think there's some things that work with it. But that's one, like I said, that I did replay, and that even then, same thing in the hype of that, they did a good job presenting that game. They made that game look very exciting, and I think that was maybe another thing too, where you and I didn't play Days Gone, so I feel like we were just playing the bangers pretty much, right? Like this, there's other ones we'll bring up, even Last of Us, which I know we'll talk about. Like you never played the second one, but it's like that's one where you go, hey, that's just not for me. But I don't think you'd be like this. You'd have critiques against it, but you get why people put it so high. Absolutely. Where I don't think Detroit Human, I've seen no one put it that high, and if they did, I'd be like, okay, you got to sell me, like, why is this as good as Spider-Man or Last of Us, right? Like, so yeah, but I had a good time. That build up and the conversation was fun when we did the actual cast, and I do like choose your own adventure games, so there's some dark stuff in there, and so I think that's one where the concept was really cool, and I hope that Star Wars game that they're making does happen, because we got that trailer and heard there's issues, and then there's just been nothing since. But no, I think that was a fun time. Same thing of, even if it's a B tier, I enjoyed my time. It wasn't a complete disappointment where I felt, man, I really wasted my time and money here, you know?
Yeah, no, I still have that distinct memory of on the review, just talking about our characters, favorite moments, that kind of thing. And one of my favorite character combos in there was, I can remember the character's name is Connor, but then I can't remember what Clancy Brown's character's name is. But that dynamic was one that I loved. And then in your game, I think Clancy Brown's character had died early on.
It was awful, because he hated me. I got nothing from him. So we had complete that, and that was the fun stuff compared to that, because he nothing of like, this character was a dud for me. So, and he killed himself.
Yeah, but out of those, because there was kind of the 3 characters, and I just remember the Marcus one being the kind of weaker one of the 3 for me. And I don't know what it was. I think I was very nostalgic, and still kind of am, for Heavy Rain, just because that was also a very specific time when I played that game with my cousin in high school, and it was like, whoa, this is a cool, weird game. And like, I wasn't much of a PlayStation guy, so like, what is this? This is so different from me freaking playing Smash Bros. Brawl on my Wii back home. And so I feel like maybe by the end of Detroit, it just didn't have that same feel to it. And like Heavy Rain, it's not like I've gone back to it. I wonder how I would feel about the story and the characters from a modern lens, but there was just something about that nostalgia that I couldn't escape. But yeah, Detroit is one that when I think back on the PS4 generation and all those games that we talked about, it's always like the 7th or 8th one that comes to mind. It's never that top of mind one. But yeah, I still had some good times. I think it did some really cool stuff. I maybe wanted it to be a bit more expansive, because I remember really liking the city and the location, but then you'd like, if you had one of those more open areas, it'd be like, okay, you're in like a park and you can go like down one street. Like, it was very limited in how much you could do, which for what the game is, like, that's totally what you need. But I think something like that maybe would have given me a bit more to chew on perhaps, but I definitely do still have some good memories of it. And just like the tone and the vibe of it was something that was very unique, and definitely is still, I would say, unique, comparing it to just some of the other games that we're talking about here, and we will be talking about.
It took a swing, and I don't know if it actually, it didn't hit it the greatest, but it stands as far as, like you said, being different apart from the other ones, because it's not like a robot hunting game. It's not like Spider-Man, so. It's
just weird to think back, because that was a 28. Okay, that was 2018. I thought it was 2017, so not quite as old as I thought it was. But like since then, the studio hasn't done anything, right? Like, it's just been that Star Wars game.
Yeah, and I get that would probably be pretty massive, right? If you work on that, so it could be hands on deck. But I think they've been through like some issues, so maybe that's it. But
Yeah.
hopefully that Star Wars games does happen because I think that that's another fun route you could take with that experience. So and Knights of the Old Republic did that very well, so there's history of it.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump to. This will probably be a quick shout out, but I do want to shout out, which is Dreams. Dreams. I'm sure a lot
I
of people
never
forgot
played
about
it, yeah.
Dreams, but I wanted to shout this out because this game finally, I think late last year, did kind of close. I think you can still create stuff, but maybe they're just like done adding new content or supporting it anymore. Like
I think supporting it, you're right. Yeah.
you can still make things and release things. But I think even last year, maybe it was the year before at this point, Media Molecule like made a game within Dreams that I heard was actually really good, and I meant to go check it out, but it's like I'm just not on my PS4 these days, so I never got around to it. I'm sure I have to update and I have to get my controller synced and then dust off the console, all that kind of thing. But it's a game I definitely want to go back to because I'm sure there's some other cool things that exist in there. I think it's one of those things that, man, that game took way too long in development, and they probably stuck with it a bit too long, and it's too bad because I think not that we need another Little Big Planet from them, but I'm curious what that team will do next. I think quite a few people have maybe left the studio since then, so I don't know what the future of Media Molecule is. I'm fearful for the future of them, honestly, just with the state of things right now. But I hope they get through it in a big way, in a good way as well. And yeah, so Dreams was just such an interesting game, and even if it didn't live up to the dream of what it seemed like it was, I'm still very glad I picked it up and messed around with it. And that was a game that I definitely stuck with for like a few weeks or a few months of just like checking it out every once in a while, see what's kind of new in there. And it's been quite a few years now since I have done that. But shout outs to Dreams for being just this weird experiment. And that's the kind of thing that I feel like the PS4 generation was so good from the Sony perspective of like letting this team make this really weird experimental thing and giving them however much money it took to develop that game because it took so many years. And like that's the kind of thing that I just feel like would not get greenlit now because probably for good reason to some extent, but I'm still glad that game exists and got to shine for even if it didn't shine that bright or for very long, it still got a bit of a time. But yeah, I still remember how weird those trailers were, and that was also a fun thing with the marketing cycle, almost like Death Stranding, but in like a different way. We're just like, what the hell is this game? I didn't understand it until the day it came out, and I picked it up on a whim. But yeah, shout out to Dreams.
Yeah, we should maybe jot that down for a topic or something in the future of games of that era that don't have to be a disappointment but didn't live up to that hype. So I feel like Dreams is in that same category of No Man's Sky, right? Of maybe eventually became a great game and it got a fan base and everything, but I think in that era of getting those games that were big and delivered, when you didn't deliver, you became kind of like a laughing stock meme for a little bit, right? And then you had to do the comeback story. And if you didn't do comeback story, you died. But almost like what I was talking about at the beginning with the games and movies sharing that decade, the same way we talk about all the time where there's certain things now in Hollywood that won't get greenlit now, right? And I guess because the other thing we don't talk about too in the story of the PS4 to the PS5 happens in the pandemic era, right? Where a lot of that stuff messed up people as far as like you had to work from home, but there's only so much you could do. So, yeah, I think that falls in that category where I'm excited to see. I think it's gonna be something that when I read lists or see podcasts, people, if they make a top 10, it's always gonna sneak in like that 9 or 10th spot because there's like a heartfelt spot to it. But I agree with you as the length, right? Because I think they announced in the PS3 era or something around that time or near the end of it where it felt like it was cooking for a long time. And then when it got there and the narrative I remember was just like, oh, well, you build your own game. And everyone's like, well, I don't want to build my own game. Like you're supposed to like, and then I think people eventually got and I've still never played, but I feel like the vibe either changed or the people that liked that found it, but maybe it was just like you said, the audience of what was wanting that game was not as big as supported what PlayStation would want, which is great because I think they were way like that was PS3. They were known as like the indie darlings, right? PlayStation. I'm not saying Dreams was that, but they had a whole different vibe where now it's definitely way more corporate, which I understand, right? Because when it's not corporate, you can argue that's when people get laid off and developers and studios get shut down, right? Because it is now. If you don't make money now, you can be in big risk of hurting the company. So
no, they had a ton of games in that generation that were like $30 or something, and it was like this indie game that was maybe not first party, but some of them were. They had some smaller teams in their portfolio, but a lot of them were like second party stuff, where they would just kind of get them as these exclusive games. And yeah, I feel like we're probably still seeing a lot of that, but it's maybe more of them working closely with PlayStation and then just like getting a paycheck to do a little bit of exclusivity there, and it still just makes a lot more sense for any indie studio. I guess you probably go to Switch first as your console of choice if you want to get an audience, but then you'd go to PlayStation. And then Xbox is like way down the list just because of like the install base, and because a lot of the people on that in that ecosystem are primed to not buy games anymore because they just use Game Pass. I'm one of those people. I still buy games, but I definitely don't buy as many as I maybe would have otherwise. I feel like I was gonna make another point with Dreams, but I can't remember what it was. So why don't you take away? What's the next game you want to shout out here?
Well, should we just talk about I feel like the one that we talk about hype, there's Spider-Man, but there's no moment I think that'll be as great as when we got that trailer, teaser, whatever it is, a reveal for Death Stranding. That was a pinnacle point. I feel like that sold you on a console, that sold, I don't think Briggs ever bought that PS4, but Briggs was thinking about it every three, like, oh, I'm gonna go there. And I think that was when we talk about Horizon and stuff. Yes, that shows, we're gonna do something new, but that was like, okay, no console's doing that, right? Because maybe you could buy, Xbox might do a futuristic dinosaur combat game, whatever, like all the other games PlayStation was doing. Even Detroit Become Human, you go, okay, maybe they could link it with somebody. That is what, when I talk about, they had that in PS4, when we talk about, they had just that narrative and what you knew what PlayStation was when you said that name. I think Death Stranding kind of defined that, because same thing, luckily it was a big enough of a hit, but it's like same thing. And if it wasn't Kojima, it's a game that nowadays I don't know if would be taking the chance on, right? Because the marketing was so weird and so out there. And I guess I shouldn't say that because it had celebrities, but it was just, even I think more so the game, not so much the lead up, because maybe I'll change my thoughts. It was not the lead up because I think they marketed it well. They had a lot of the big stars, but to make that game that at times is just like a walking simulator. For many times you're doing nothing but just enjoying the environment. When we live in a day and age where like online games and Fortnite and Call of Duty, or just like all those shooters, like all these things, that you live in a very fast-paced world. Death Stranding is the antithesis of what this generation isn't. So that's very like exciting. And I think that's, for me, it's tough for me because there's probably another exclusive we'll bring up that I do associate the PlayStation with. But really, when I think of PS4, Death Stranding is the first thing I jump to, right? And that's where I'm sorry for the PS4 people, but I selfishly like that Death Stranding 2 is just PS5, because one, it won't be held back, but two, it will have that distinct difference. And I think, unlike Horizon and even like Spider-Man, I feel like Hideo's not going to make a sequel where there's not a distinct difference. I think we already saw that with that first trailer. We went, okay, this already feels like something different than Death Stranding. So to me, that was the idea of Spider-Man was a dream realized, but that was, okay, this was a nightmare in a good way realized. Didn't even know this was a thing. And also for many people like Kirkland, he eventually played it, didn't finish, of course, but there was that big contingent of those PT people, right? That were felt very raw. And that wasn't this, but still it was just like and it was a big celebratory moment too, because remember, I forgot that was right before we still were in the podcast when you had those things, because I remember I played Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain and I talked about on the podcast. That was in the years where like Konami wouldn't let him go accept an award and stuff, right? So it was like Spider-Man in a different way, where we're celebratory for like the game industry. It was like, oh, this guy that has made a lot of great games, now at the end of his tenure been treated like trash, he comes over to PlayStation and makes this very crazy, very different sort of game. So that just felt like a huge just touchdown home run, especially the trailer. But I think when I remember specifically, it switched and showed Norman Reedus. That was like this collective of, oh, they're doing the thing. That's where Spider-Man, they were like the dream makers. So such a unique game. That game, even if the sequel does disappoint me, that for me, unlike Horizon, I don't think it will take down my experience of Death Stranding 1. I think with Death Stranding 2, it could be, oh, they took a big swing and they missed it here, where Horizon was, okay, that is more of the same, and I didn't enjoy it to the same extent as the last time. I don't think anything can ruin my Death Stranding 1 experience, because that's something very special. So that's what I associate the PS4 with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was just something like every trailer, and just wanting to rewatch those trailers over and over, and looking at all the details and trying to figure out what the hell is going on with these creatures and the baby. Like, I very rarely is there a trailer that just like hits me in that way? Like I feel like for Spelunky or like GTA 5 maybe, or like Starfield, like some trailers I'm like, okay, I'm looking at every detail, I'm like rewinding, watching them again. And Death Stranding was one of those for me. It's got to be up there for like video game trailers that I've watched over and over again.
Trailers in general to me, TV show, movies, that's like maybe we should do that on Bread and Butter, top 10 trailers in general, because that to me, like the anticipation, the music, because remember it's like a black screen, it's just like that, like it's the music starting up, it's like that was just like how. And again, that's why I think Kojima just needs to make a movie, because he has those sensibilities of like a Comic-Con trailer. So
absolutely. I mean, even it gets a bit more interesting now for me too, just after I've been actually going back and playing Metal Gear Solid after all these years and seeing how cinematic those early games are, and seeing like how much he just is in love with film and camera angles and all these things. So to go back and like think about what Death Stranding is now, kind of playing it in reverse is really fun as well. But yeah, as you said earlier, like just not even knowing until launch day, until I was playing the game, and probably not even for a few hours in, because the first like 3 hours are like all cutscenes. Not even knowing what the gameplay was, what the minute-to-minute stuff was. And I watched different things, and I remember at one point, kind of close to launch, I think they did like a 15-minute longer gameplay thing, and I only watched like a snippet of it because I wanted to be surprised. But it still is a game that like, I've never played a game quite like it in terms of the gameplay. Yes, there is. You can have guns, and it could be a third-person shooter, and it's kind of like other stealth games you've played. But then, just like this management aspect to it. He's like, you never see that kind of gameplay from a AAA level studio with this kind of fidelity. Usually that's like maybe an indie game is like focusing so much on like what it's like to carry equipment around. But it's like, no, this is like this huge budget game that took what is maybe this kind of very simple gameplay, but then just like cranking it up a notch and adding so many cool things on top of it that, I'll like forever be a Death Stranding fan. That's a game that just like ages like a fine wine for me. And some of these other games like Detroit or Horizon, or maybe I'm like, I don't know, the love kind of slowly fades away as time passes on. Death Stranding, my love just grows, and I'm sure the sequel will be something weird and different, and it will be better in some ways and worse in other ways. But I think it'll just be adding to that greater world of this such a strange IP that I just can't get enough of. And the actor reveals all the trailers were so exciting as well.
Yeah, like remember when we got Mads Mikkelsen? Like that wasn't the E3 one, but that was down the line. That was in the era of us all coming off Hannibal. He was in other stuff, and it was just felt like Spider-Man and that felt like, oh, these are like the key first games. Like they're made for us there. So
shout outs to Death Stranding. Let's see. How about let's take a quick break actually. We'll be right back and we'll get into more PS4 goodness. Okay, we are back. Next up, I want to shout out the next kind of combo of games that to me is similar but opposite to how I feel about Horizon and the Spider-Man duo, which is the God of War games. So I think it was also 2018, which now think back on, man, Detroit, Spider-Man, and God of War.
They could have held back a bit. They could have, but they didn't.
They could have. They went hard. But having that game come out, and I didn't play it at launch, even though all those trailers were great. It was another fun hype cycle to watch. And I just love that snowy setting, seeing some of those giants, and like, man, what is this tone? This is so different from those very arcadey early games. But finally, when doing the retro, kind of leading into the second game, finally playing through that game, and like, not loving it that much. Like the gameplay didn't do it for me. The level design was not doing it. I didn't like the puzzles. Story was like pretty good, but that was kind of the one thing I was clinging on to. But then I had that second effect where God of War Ragnarok just like dialed everything up to another level. The gameplay had a lot more variety to it. The areas and locations were more iconic. I didn't love the puzzles still, but it just like overall the gameplay of it was much better. And then the story was just like, I'm going to say 4 to 5 times better. That's a very random metric, but it just was so good. The characters, the acting, the amount of stuff that was going on. It was, I think, a bit longer too, so you got to steep in some of these things more. Some really great iconic moments that I still remember. And I know you still haven't got around to Ragnarok, so we kind of have maybe opposite perspectives here, because I know you love 2018. But how do you feel about that now that it's been 6 years since you've played that one?
Yeah, that's a different one, because the sequel. There's another one too. When you talk about games that, hey, what
got to play that?
What should I? And that's the other thing where it's on my list. So that's the thing where, hey, if it's not Elden Ring, that could be up there, because especially nowadays, I feel like there's probably some cheap sales. It's a good thing about the PlayStation games. Eventually, once they're around for like 3 years, they're
I think
nice
Saris
penny.
has. I think he actually bought like my PS4 copy off me, so you could probably borrow that and then just like pay the $10 fee to get the upgrade version, or just play that version on your PS5. I'm sure it plays pretty well still.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, that game for me, I've said this many times on all podcasts. Like, despite we were talking about the Gauntlet on the originals, and check out our Discord. It was fun reminiscing about that. But like, I don't like the bro-y genre things. I'm not a car guy. I'm not into most sports. So that's where God of War, those original games, always fell in that genre of like. And it's weird because I like professional wrestling. But I just see this big jacked up guy with the naked girl. I'm just like, I don't know. Like this is kind of tacky to me. It just wasn't my. And I played the games, but I never finished any of them. I just went, not for me. I have other games that interest me. So that is just. It's still talking about Death Stranding as the ultimate way to advertise game. That is like the ultimate way to me to revitalize a franchise. Because I won't say the franchise was dead, but it felt very much. Not that no one cared. It just felt like it was in a weird spot of. Kind of like unfortunately what I thought they're going to do with Halo and even with Gears, you get to a point where it's like, what more can you do with it, right? And we kind of get that even with Mario every once in a while, but then they put out some new version of the game and you go, oh, they figured out a way to crack the code, or there's this new gimmick to it where it's tough with some of these like a Halo and a God of War. Like, how do you revitalize this hack and slash, just very kind of just beastie type of game, right? But they found a way where, one, it wasn't hack and slash. You still got to keep those aspects of you are hacking, slashing, but it's a different kind of combat system. And two, it did the 180 of, okay, this is a very just Gatorade, Vin Diesel filled, like you're just going to love action movie too. It got like the Logan treatment of, we're going to slow it down, we're going to take our time and tell a big story, and it's going to be a lot more somber. And funny enough, somehow, like, it's maybe if it came out this generation, you get a bunch of, it's woke and whatnot, but it just like captured all the same still fans and then brought on new ones. So to me, it's a game that, and the sequel just came out at a bad time. It's one of those like, I loved the game, but I same thing thought like, do I need, not that I need more, but it's almost like the Horizon thing of like, is just going to be a bit more of the same, and I've already felt filled enough. So for me, it's like a thing where I thought, okay, I'll get to it eventually, and then I've heard great things about it again, so it will be on the list. But for me, it's just the peak of how do you, and maybe that's another topic too one day, of revitalization in games, but that to me is, if it's not the top one, it's the top three as far as like bringing back a franchise, fresh coat of paint, and it working to a big degree. And yeah, I had a great time with it. I agree with you. The setting's nice. I love the characters. And for me, just as usual, that action is very satisfying. The gameplay with it, the mechanics. So very, very fun time. And just another landmark period for them. Because I think that was, again, touching back to, okay, if you used to love Sony, we're not leaving you in the wayside, right? So
yeah, definitely. Next up, let's jump over to Ghost of Tsushima. So I think this was really one of the last ones in terms of what we're talking about here, in terms of like that strictly PS4 generation. I guess Last of Us Part 2 would have come out afterwards. Now I'm testing my calendar skills here.
I think Last of Us 2 was after Ghost. So I think they were in the same summer though, right? Or the same season?
They were pretty close, I want to say. Here, I'll do some.
I feel like Ghost was like in the June era, and Last of Us was like in the August, September era. I could be wrong. But I just remember being a hot summer and playing them both.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, June for Last of Us, and then...
Oh, so maybe it's flipped, actually.
June and then July. Wow, were they really that close?
Yeah.
I guess they were.
Yeah.
That's actually crazy. I definitely... I definitely don't remember them being that close to each other.
I remember them being close, but not that close. But that's incredible. So that you're right though. That's really is like, as far as the big tier titles, one of the last, if not the last one for the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I know. I've been doing it too.
Yeah,
yeah. Ghost is a weird one as well, where the first couple trailers that we got at those iconic E3 presentations were really atmospheric. Obviously the visuals really stood out, but it's like, what is this game? The first couple times, and then eventually we saw a little bit more, and it's like, okay, we're seeing the action of this, but like, I still don't really know what the structure of this game is. And then I do have the distinct memory of like a couple weeks, or maybe it was a month before launch, they had like a 15-minute state of play where it's just like, here's the rundown, here's how this game works, and that's where we saw like, oh, okay, it's got the open world structure. You got this map, you're going for your icons. You got the wind that's chasing you to these different icons instead of the classic, line on the map sort of thing. And that's when it's like, okay, I finally see what this game is. And so it maybe is something that we've kind of seen before, but still like that setting of it, the visuals were fantastic. But then, yeah, the gameplay is what did it for me so much. That combat system is so good. The variety, the different stances, all the different unlocks for it. And then even just like how it evolved over time. A similar situation as Horizon or Spider-Man, where I didn't really love the Iki Island DLC, but Legends was an amazing update. And that came out so soon after launch, I remember, and it was a surprise. We didn't know about it before launch. And it was just like, here's this online mode that we're putting out there. Check it out. It's free. Go check it out. Why not? And then it was just amazing to me. You played a ton of that. And I want to go back. Every once in a while, I'm like, I want to go back and play some more Legends because it was so good. Just all the different modes, the leveling up the different classes, and then eventually they added like the costumes from like different PlayStation characters too, right? I remember that was a fun thing. So yeah, I look back on my time with Ghost of Tsushima very fondly, even if that DLC didn't necessarily leave a sour note, but it didn't really enhance my experience beyond like how much I love that base game, I suppose. So it felt weird to kind of come back to it and not really be blown away. But yeah, that game is just amazing.
Yeah, for me, it's one of those things where we talk about this, like you brought up Assassin's Creed. You can name, and Watch Dogs, you can name all these different kind of third world games that, like a Jedi Fallen Order, that have happened. Yeah, third person kind of open world games that have happened since the start of even the PS4 and then up to the end of it, right? But this to me was the degree of doing all those things to, other than probably what people might argue was Zelda, to the best degree, because Zelda has different things going on with Breath of the Wild, but in the generation that's not Nintendo or the consoles that aren't, I feel like it's all those things that you want smoothened or straightened. Like you talk about the clunky gameplay maybe in some of those Ubisoft things, you weren't getting that here, right? And that's one thing that this game did too as well, was just the atmosphere. You know, I talked about how I want to jump back in Elden Ring. That's one of the things I love, is just the atmosphere of that world, right? Like the second you see a screenshot, it takes you right back to, okay, I know where I was. Where even Horizon, I get that like a little bit, but not as much. For Ghost, just whether it was the music, whether it was the tone, the vibe, the colors, you get brought back right away. Same thing, like I'm never gonna forget in Legends that like boat map that we go all the time, where there's like a sunken boat and that's one of the spots you got to defend, and there's lots of iconography like that. So again, I don't think it's like one of the all-time greatest games, and even PS5, I'm not sure, maybe it will be on the list, maybe it won't be, but I think it just did a lot of things very, very well. And yeah, that's the narrative too I always remember, is we had like the anti-build up because it looked pretty, but I remember you and me were I think Tyler and Liam were really hyped on, but you were like, I don't know, like what they like, it looks nice, but what are and I feel like since then I've seen a lot of games that come out that have that ninja samurai aesthetic that end up maybe being good, but still have not hit the barometer of what.
Yeah, even like Rise of the Ronin that came out just a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
it very much
and I feel like it's
just that 2.0 or something.
Yeah, and I just feel like the conversation goes away quickly. Where Ghost, I feel like that stuck around for a bit. So yeah,
another
very
big pivot from that studio too.
Yes.
Maybe not as big of a pivot as Killzone to Horizon. I don't know if that would be as big. What was their Infamous? Would have been their game. Right,
yeah, I feel like Killzone to Horizon's probably bigger, right? Because at least Infamous is like third person type. There's some movements that'd be similar. You kind of have a vertical slice. We've been here before, but Killzone, that's something completely else, you know.
I had two down in here for you in particular. Of course, Last of Us Part 2, and then Until Dawn. I don't know if you really associate that as a PS4 game, but I think you probably do, right?
I do, absolutely, because it didn't. Yeah, it's going to remake now.
I'm sure it's been on other things now, but I feel like it was that exclusive at the time, right?
It is, because for me, I think that was, I'd have to look at the list, but I think that was the first PlayStation exclusive that I bought. Because it was earlier on in the generation, right? It was one of those. So I feel like it's something that I still really want to get into the quarry. Same thing that came out in a summer where
it's on Game Pass now too, actually.
Yeah, and that's why I saw that. And I've heard there's some multiplayer stuff. So I think maybe next year, because I'd probably play with Emily, because me and her played a lot of Friday 13th. And there's another game I'd associate with, you talk about games associate, Friday 13th and Mad Max. Those are two with the PlayStation era that and another one too is the Arkham Knight game, the third Batman game, because that was a big deal. And I just remember I took a lot of sick days and many hours of just playing that to its completion. But Until Dawn, I had a fun time. That for me is I've had in a brighter spot than Detroit Become Human, because I think it is a choose your own adventure game, so it can have less return sometimes, but that one just I end up having more fun with, and I had more enjoyment with overall, because I think Detroit Become Humans goes for some bigger swings, and in that way you can also miss. But Until Dawn, yeah, absolutely. I won't be picking up the remastered, because like unless you haven't played it, then I'd highly recommend it. But some of the changes and things is like, oh, it doesn't look like I'm needed this. But no, I think it was a very fun, cool game, and it kind of kicked off a whole studio. They've done lots of different things that have worked to varying degrees or not, but definitely that one. And yeah, Last of Us 2, that is going to always be my most conflicted of the PS5. You can go back, that was one of our bigger reviews, because I think that game had a lot of conversation points and people all over the place. And yeah, I remember the highs and lows at times thinking, man, this is still again one of the greatest stories. And then trucking, that was that summer, because I remember with Ghost of Tsushima, it was super hot, and I just remember being like sweaty playing that game, and then going through hours and hours of being like upset with the game, like I'm sweating, I'm playing this game. I was in a place where we didn't have central AC, so I'm like, oh my god, like, and I wanted to finish it. So but it's still like a kind of a masterclass in the sense of many people have it ranked as number one, and it does a lot of things. It did change up stuff from the first one, and story wise, and clearly, luckily for the TV show, it's worked too. Like it's like Last of Us has somehow. There's been many. I'd love to see what the argument is. Like I feel like it's either that or God of War. What has defined PlayStation from PS4 to PS5 on is like what's its biggest game? Because with Spider-Man and Death Stranding, I couldn't say that, right? There's aspects to it. Spider-Man I can for sales, but I just mean like its identity. And I still like edge it to Last of Us a little bit, because I feel like Last of Us 1 made them win that era at the end and sells PS3. And I feel like Last of Us 2 brought a lot of people on. And even though there were some people that were negative on it, tons of people loved that game as well. So it's, and we're probably getting the third one. We're not getting the multiplayer one anymore, but it's probably for the best. Canceled. But yeah, like I think that takes a crown for that was the most anticipated of that era, what people were really waiting for. It feels like a very Dark Knight to Batman Begins or Endgame to Infinity War, where that first game was so huge, and for me it delivered for the most part with some kinks in there. So
yeah, that's a good point, because when we look at these like Horizon, Spider-Man, Detroit, Death Stranding, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, these are all kicking off new things, or like Spider-Man's an established character, but it's like this is a new iteration of it. And so yeah, you're right that was kind of maybe the biggest hype cycle in and of itself, just because it did have that first game, and it's one of those games that's considered like a top 10 all-timer, just for the whole industry across the board, right?
Yeah, and that's why to me it was so big when those leaks happened. That was a massive story for weeks.
That was a big deal.
That was bad for them, but that was just like that was everywhere. That was being covered by everybody. That was one of the worst cases. Like even Grand Theft Auto, those leaks, that was big, but it's like we still don't know specific story points. There's so much stuff to show where that was just, and that's where I think that shows how big that game was, because people were after that game trying to just take it down or just show it off, and it was a big story, unfortunately. So
yeah. I had a list of some other just shout-outs of games that I either played a very small amount of or didn't play that I think are worthy of shouting out as just big PS4 games. Was there other ones on your list that we haven't mentioned yet?
No, I think I hit it with the Mad Max, Batman, and you know what you talked about Outlast 2, or just Outlast 2 TOO, because I'm always going to think about that's one of the first games I got on PlayStation Plus. I didn't have a PS3. I had heard about PlayStation Plus. That was a
great service. It of course got eclipsed by Game Pass eventually, but like for what it was, that was so many games that I played through there that were really great, and like they had great offerings and like games coming out pretty close to release and sometimes even the same time as release. Yeah,
and you know what? A mini shout out to Warzone, because Warzone that's where Call of Duty, because that's like I ended up getting back into Call of Duty in the PS4 era, which was not really planned. It was free. They all try it because Bug Taylor and whatnot, and another thing, just not like to be general, but just games in general because of that, and just other things. When I had to scroll through and find some stuff in the Gauntlet videos, like that always jumps to mind too, is lots of just multiplayer games and stuff of just downloading random games. So that's the other thing I associate too, is just that era of us in the Custardome just being there for hours and recordings. But yeah, I think those were the main non-exclusive ones. If I think of any, I'll bring them up. But I think I hit and I guess kind of the Shadow of War games a bit. Like I don't associate them, but like I played a lot of those on there. So.
Okay, so some shout-outs. PT, of course,
is
a big deal. Of course, not an official game. You can't go play it nowadays, so it's a weird one, going to always exist in obscurity. But worthy of shout out.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a new Ratchet and Clank game. I assume there was.
There was, yeah.
Yeah.
There's exclusive. Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah. Infamous had its. I believe the sequel was a new game there. Final Fantasy VII Remake. I remember both me and you checked out the demo that they had.
Yeah.
Which was really solid. Still haven't gone and played the full game. Uncharted 4. That was a big PS4 game as well. Days Gone. I think this is out of the ones I'm listing here. Days Gone is the biggest one where I still do really want to go and check that game out. And I'm trying to think back into that time of why I didn't end up picking it up at launch, because I feel like I was pretty hyped on it, and those trailers were also amazing. They were in that same ball game as the rest of these other big games that we're talking about, maybe on like a slightly lower tier, but I still thought some of those trailers, like that first one with like 100 zombies climbing up to him in the farmhouse thing, like that was a wild scene. So I don't know why I've never actually gotten around to it yet.
I think it was one of those, I feel like the release date was bad time-wise for us as far as like a busy summer with other games and movies. And I think it was just the general reception was kind of like it's all right. And then I think the redemption of it came later where its defenders came, no, this is a really fun game. So I think it was just a combo of reception, and it came out. I just remember that summer. It was like, did it come out 2017?
2019.
Oh yeah. Well, no, that was a big summer for us too. I guess too. There's tons of games.
It come in the spring of 2019. So
and when did Marvel Alliance come out? Was that 2019 as well?
That was July 2019.
Yeah. So I just feel like I just remember that, and that was in the end game. Like I just feel like 2019 was very busy for us. I think that was just like
I was probably still because I guess if that was the timeline, then Smash just came out in December. I was
and
still
you were
only
traveling
playing
too in
Ultimate.
summer as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's all I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were traveling as well too. So
that's true. I was probably away in that month.
Yes.
Actually. Yeah.
Really I just remember 19 was, luckily that blew up the podcast, and that gave us a lot of opportunities. But I just remember 19 being a specifically very like
we're busy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I'd like to one day, maybe if we ever go through a lack of content. But,
I don't know if it's on that PlayStation catalog thing.
No,
right now.
They refuse. Yeah, and there's lots of beef because I remember that when the Ghost of Tsushima sales hit a certain landmark and PlayStation was like giving all these accolades. I remember the creator of the game being like, "Oh, we hit this a long time ago and we didn't get any accolades." So
yeah,
I feel like it was done.
And now he's left, I think. And
I don't think it was. I think it's like for them in general looked at it as like a dark mark, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. Other games, Hellblade was at the time a console exclusive. Now, of course, it's owned by Xbox and it's on Game Pass. And the sequel is, I don't think the sequel is coming to PlayStation. Definitely not.
No,
right?
I don't think so.
So yeah, interesting to see that kind of shift over time. Persona, I think, got a couple big releases there in the PS4 era. Order 1886 is one I've never played, but always heard big things about. Bloodborne is, of course, a huge. What's that?
You've heard good things about Order 66?
I just heard it's different and interesting and like worthy of mention, I suppose. I don't know if people would put it in their top 10, maybe in their top 20 of the PS4 because it's such a strong console. Bloodborne is one I've played like 5 hours of it. I think I just played it too soon after Dark Souls 3, which was a game that just blew me away and was like all I was playing for like 2 months there with me and the other boys at the Custard Dome there. And so I think I just played it too soon after that, and so I kind of bounced off of it. But of course, most people would put that in like their top 3 probably for PS4 generation. It's a big deal, but maybe a little blind spot for us. And then what about Metal Gear Solid 5? What does that do for you in retrospect? Yeah,
it's one of those. It's in a weird spot because I really enjoyed. I loved it. I think it's one of those that the hype got me at the beginning of like when we did our top 10 cast, I had it in like the bottom 10, but I was like, I don't know about that now, but I think it's also shrouded with a lot of bad stuff that happened there too, because it's one of those you're enjoying and playing it, but then at the same time you're hearing about like this guy wants to leave this company and they're holding him hostage contractually, and you're like, oh, like you feel a little but like really fun game. Like if I made a PS4 top 10 of my personal games, it would definitely be up there, even included like just overall games. Metal Solid Gear games all have a special Metal Gear Solid. All have a special place in my heart somewhere or another. A lot of those are just nostalgia, but no, really, really fun game with a lot of. I wish there was more. We talked about, I can't remember in some review, but I love there's a dynamic where you can kidnap people and take them back to your base and you make them work for you, and you can string them like, oh, I need a tech guy. Oh, I need a weapons guy. And I'm waiting for that to be in some other game. So.
Sounds like Watch Dogs Legion.
Yeah, there you go. I got a reason to put that higher on the list.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's we'll make our little top 5 here of our top of the stack. I remembered what I was going to say about Dreams. Is I feel like Dreams, if it released today in like the current PlayStation ecosystem where they're more open to having things on PC and even like Helldivers too, day and date PC and console. I actually feel like that would have been really good for Dreams. It's crazy that that game never did come out on PC because that would have been just such a better way for people to make games, a lot more efficient than like a console, like using a controller, I would imagine, even if the game was built around it. But I think if it did launch day and date with PC and console and it did have that kind of integration, I think it could have been bigger and better than what it was. So that was what I wanted to shout out. But all to say that I don't think Dreams is making the top 5. I feel like Death Stranding has got to be in there.
Yeah.
Ghost of Tsushima has got to be in there.
So are we making this as our personal, like what you?
It's me and you. It's me and you, I think. Yeah.
And are we just having 5, or are they ranked as far as like a?
We'll rank
1 to
them.
5?
We'll get the 5 first, and then we'll rank them.
Okay, okay, because I think Stranding is pretty high up there.
It's got a good case for the rule.
Yeah.
I guess I would put Spider-Man
Yes.
just above Miles, and I would just put that one in there. I think. I think where we might find this difficult is God of War, because
Yeah.
I would love to see Ragnarok in there, but you would love to see 2018 in there.
Yeah.
So we're kind of
I
at a
guess that's
standstill.
tough.
It's going to be tricky.
I guess because it's difficult because
But I guess we could do the loophole of saying Ragnarok is not a PS4
That's what I was
game.
gonna say, because it was in the PS that weird era, right? But
So
then
maybe
would
we
you
just do that. Maybe we just do that.
But then would you even put God of War? I say have it as a contender right now, but see if there's any 5 like
Okay.
pure PS4 ones, because I would have it I think up there. But if there's
Yeah.
one more we could agree on, then
Yeah. I mean, Horizon. I think I still would put it in that top 5.
Yeah. If I can just take myself back to that era and just be okay, what I think about then, absolutely, yeah.
So that leaves us only one more spot then if we're doing a top 5. So
One more.
because we got Death Stranding, Ghost, Spider-Man, and Horizon.
Right, Ghost, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So leaving us with possibilities of Detroit, the God of Wars we talked about, Last of Us Part 2. I guess MGS 5 would be another one that we could consider. I would.
That
be
was not
fine if-
exclusive though, I don't think.
Was it not?
No, I should have said that. No, that wasn't. That was at the time I think Konami was. It was like a big deal, like, oh, Metal Gear Solid's coming over to PlayStation
really?
now.
Huh.
Right? There's an Xbox version, right?
Yeah, literally the first image is like an
Mhm.
Xbox 360 case
Yeah.
with it, which is
I
funny.
remember
I don't know
'cause
why
that was
I
the time
associated that
that-
very much with the PlayStation thing.
All
I
the
guess
other ones were, though,
The
I
series
think.
has been.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's why. It was at the time that and Final Fantasy were going over, so it was changing.
Right. Well, that
so
makes it easier then. That's
that's
obviously
all,
not
yeah.
a contender here. Worthy of a shout out though as an association. So yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like I would be fine with The Last of Us sneaking in there as the other slot because I don't care as much for 2018 God of War.
Yeah.
But I'm also fine with it just because of like, I don't know. It's still a good game. I still like the story of it, even if it's overall maybe not one of my top dogs.
I feel
But I
like
think those ones would make it over Detroit. Is kind of what I'm getting.
I
at.
do too. Even though like we might have a more common base on that one together,
I
there
think
is
so.
just something weird about having like. I wouldn't feel right about that if we die in 50 years from now. If someone finds Geek First, they're going through Sidequest, they're like, oh, they put Detroit Become Human in their top 5.
Above Bloodborne, all
Yeah.
these Souls fans would be so mad at us.
The only reason I would have let God of War over Last of Us is because Last of Us 2, I'm more positive on, but you can't deny that has, not critically, but I say fan-wise, a big split. So you could argue, hey,
Sure.
there's tons of people that might not even put in the top 10, right? Some of those choices. And 2, I feel like you can also argue that the bigger thing for Last of Us could be Last of Us 1 in the PS3, where if you're making that top 5, that's a definitive game. Not saying Last of Us Part 2 isn't, but I feel like one's more definitive, where God of War is more definitive, like we said, in a way where it revitalized something, and at least it gets you to the bridge of the game you like as well, right?
Yeah.
Like it starts a lot of things, and like I said, I don't think anyone's done a revitalization as good as what they did yet. I think people have been close and they've tried it, but no one has, I think, achieved the hype and then also following up the game. Because I feel like it's two things: either the hype's not there and the game's really good and underrated, or the hype is really there, and then I think Halo's a good example. People are really excited, think this could be something new, and nothing really came of it, right? It got more negative feedback than anything. And it didn't even take the God of War approach. People are just kind of hoping that, of like, oh, maybe they'll take note for what God of War did, and it didn't happen. So I think I would put God of War over Last of Us on our top 5 list.
I've just wrote this down on my kind of random topics for side quizzes. I would love to go back and look at like what are the best kind of reboots
Yes,
or like
absolutely.
reimaginings of a
Yeah.
game. I think that would be interesting to take a look at.
We should do that, yeah. Because
Because I think of something like Zelda, but like Zelda's always been a series that is always evolving and changing. And so even when Breath of the Wild comes out and it is something different for the series, it doesn't feel as big of a landmark kind of change than like God of War does, even if like on paper it technically is from like I guess Skyward Sword. But it does feel distinctly different somehow.
Exactly. Like, what is it? Maybe we'll try and time that if either one, if we have no topics, or two, if we ever get something about Fable, because that's like,
that's a great potential contender. Just we'll see how that game.
Like I think there's a difference between a continuation of a franchise versus kind of the reboots, and I kind of agree with you. Where Zelda, Mario, they're kind of in that thing where they might take a long break, but that's kind of a given, right? You're kind of they're gonna take off off the gas for something a couple years ago, like Doom. Like to me, that's in a sense like a reboot, bringing it back, redoing a big coat of paint. And that's where it's like, okay, that had the reverse. I don't think the hype was there at the beginning, but once the game came out, it really built up. So yeah, definitely jot that down because I think there's fun things, and we can even debate that, like what's a reboot versus reimagined. Yes, but God of War definitely to me is like of course it's a sequel and they take place, but if you can play a game that has nothing to do with the other ones and kind of jump on, you're definitely in the reboot category, and that's God of War.
So I think with that, I mean, it makes sense then that God of War would be in that 5th slot because we had to debate to get it on there. I'm with you. I think Death Stranding, for me and you, for Dylan Musk and Travis Snell, like Death Stranding is the number one because that game just almost completely worked for us. And I know that was another divisive one, like Last of Us in a way, maybe in a different way, but still divisive.
Yeah.
But we love the gameplay. We love the story. We love how silly it can be at times. Love the horror elements of it. Like everything freaking works in that game for me. And I just, even all these years later, I still love it just as much as I feel like I did then. So I feel like that's a slam dunk number one for me.
I think if it were something else that we differed on, like on the review, but I remember the excitement of talking about that in the lead up. So I think that's number one with a bullet. So,
and then I kind of feel like Ghost of Tsushima sneaks into number 2 for me because you have Spider-Man and Horizon as the other ones. I think for Horizon it's definitely above it. Spider-Man, it's close, but I think it's Legends that pushes it over the top there because that's just like offers this other kind of experience with it and kind of gave me revitalization with it. But then again, it's just like a great open world. Love that wind mechanic once again, the combat of it. And I think, if we look at Spider-Man versus Ghost, like they both kind of have maybe similar story issues where the story's good, but it's like not the thing that's elevating it like a Death Stranding, like a God of War. So I think that would be my number 2, but I'm not offended if Spider-Man takes the number 2 slot. How do you feel?
I think you made a good point with the addition of Legends, because I think I would have pushed back a little bit of I think just for some hypeness, and then
if the Spider-Man DLC maybe was better than it was, maybe that could have been the thing that pushes it back over top.
Yeah, so I think and not that I'm like oh man outrageous at Ghost, like I think that one's a very down the middle. Give me one day to think about it. I might go each different route like 10 out of 10 times, right? But I think Legends, I agree with you, that pushes it over the top to make that number 2.
So that leaves our list at God of War number 5, Horizon Zero Dawn at 4, Spider-Man 2018 at number 3, Ghost of Tsushima number 2, Death Stranding number 1. You happy with that?
Yeah, and I think not that's like a safe list. I think if anyone were to see that, they might go like, "Oh, Death Stranding." That would be
got our personal touch on it.
Yeah, but I think that's also a game that I think like Last of Us 2 haters, when they see people praise that, they go, "How could they do that?" But I think lots of people will look at Death Stranding and it's divisive. But I think they always go away with that. Oh, that just wasn't for me. Like that's a weird game, but it's also like I get why people like that game, but I don't. Where Last of Us is like you did this to the character, you put it in this chronological order. But I think Death Stranding, people know it's like it's not like it's weird calling that a cult game because I feel like that's more of an independent game, but for anything that's like a AAA game, it has like a cult status in a way of, okay, the people that love that game really enjoy that game. Or even this time ago around, I remember this trailer for 2, many people just be like, I don't get it, and I'm not getting this game. Like I still don't understand why people are hyped for this. And I go, oh, well, I'm there. So
yeah. Travis, this was so much fun. I feel like I haven't really got to rave about PlayStation in a while, just 'cause I'm not like playing the games, and like I haven't gone back to anything recently. So it was really fun to kind of be back. This puts me back a few years. This takes me back to the Kelowna era of like playing some of these games. So that was a very fun discussion to have. Any closing thoughts on the PS4 here? Not that we can never talk about PS4 again.
That's it.
Bring it up whenever we want. But
no, it was it was fun to dip back. It was fun to look at that era because that's the bread and butter of when podcasts for us was starting. And like I said, I don't think it's the same like even me and Kirkland had the PS5. I don't know if it's that same type of. I don't look back at the PS5 yet as this all changing thing. I look at it as like, okay, still got great games, having a great time. I'm happy with my purchase. It's not like, oh, what a bust.
Yeah.
Not that. There could be a whole other.
That's still your
narrative,
go-to. Like if you're buying a
Oh, yeah.
multi-plat game, like you're still gonna get it on PlayStation over Xbox, right? That's kind of your go-to.
Yes and no. I actually lean towards no, just because the space. That's why though. Only
okay.
purely because the space. Because Xbox, I think I've bought it for like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh, like the hard drive space, you mean?
Hard drive space. It's purely just because the Xbox was bigger than the PlayStation, so that's why I went that.
You got
route.
Call of Duty on there, which is taking up all that freaking.
Yes,
hard
Call of
drive.
Duty is the big thing there, but so I don't think the PS5 will look back as fondly because there's not as defining moments like you just talked about. They have a whole year where, hey, we don't have a game coming out, where that didn't happen before, right? So
yeah, hopefully the second half. I mean, Death Stranding 2 is going to be a big one for us, but Wolverine and some other stuff, we'll see. I'm sure we'll get some good bangers here.
I'm excited for Wolverine. Yeah, that could be what Spider-Man was this gen, because I don't think Spider-Man 2 was that. I think that was just keep people happy,
right?
And it sold some more consoles. I get it.
Definitely. So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening. This is a very fun, kind of impromptu topic and episode. But yeah, we'll be back next week as we always are. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.